Alright, well I just got home from doing the first submersion test there on my submersible, and it's kind of got me, back into gear on this project and wanting to get going on it. So I've got the stepper motor here and this gear that mates up nicely with it. And I made a little insert already that goes in here that's going to have a piece of ready rod going through. So I need to make a plate to mount this. And then there's going to be the ready rod sticking through, and that's going to sit like that with the ready rod coming out. And then there's going to be, on either end of this, there's going to be a little motor mounted on there with the propeller. And the idea is that this is going to turn so that you can angle those propellers pointing up, pointing forward, backwards, down, whatever direction you want, to give me complete mobility. And then, of course, driving each individual side will give me the ability to turn. So the first thing I'm going to do, now that I know that I've got lots of weight room, I'm going to make it out of aluminum. So I'm going to take this piece of aluminum, I'm going to take this magic marker here, and I'm just going to color this whole thing black so that I can scribe my lines and it'll be easier to see. So I changed my mind, that black one was not working too well, so I got this blue Sharpie brand pen that I'm going to try with a chisel point, and hopefully that'll work out a little bit better. Of course, the ideal thing to do would be to use some blue dye, but I don't have any of that, so I'm just using a marker. And then when I'm done, I can easily wash all this off with a little bit of acetone. Not as good as using dye, because of course there's little marks all over from where I've squiggled, but hopefully that'll do. Alright, well I don't know though that's going to show up on camera, but I've gone ahead and transferred the layout of this plate here, the outside of it, and then these 4 bolt holes I've got marked out. And I'm going to start off with a small drill, and I'm going to start drilling those out. I'm going to drill a pilot hole and go from there. Then I'm going to also, maybe I'll do that first, I'll mark out the center point here. And I'm going to mark out for this ring, because I'm going to have to mill a recess for that to sit in. Alright, well that looks close enough to me. So I'm going to have to enlarge those holes a bit, figure out what size that gear is, measure that up, drill that out, drill these out a bit more, and then I'm going to work on machining this circle here. I marked it out, I think it was about 5 thousandths bigger than what I need, because it's, well, yeah, it's going to be a circle, so I'm going to just sort of mill that out and eyeball it and do it by hand. I don't have any CNC equipment yet. Alright, so to go with the bigger holes, I'm going to use this step bit, and I'm going to put a block under so I'm drilling onto the table. Last time, you probably noticed with the pilot holes, I had it just hanging over the edge, which is not the greatest, but for a little pilot hole, that's okay. So now that I've got that lined up, I got to go down to the 4th step. And the nice thing about a step bit is, let's see if we can get this in here. If you just barely start to cut into the next step, you can use it as a countersink. So I changed bits again here, and now I'm going to try and get this center hole up to 1/2 inch so it'll clear that gear. And once that's done, then I'll switch over to an end mill, actually clamp the work down, and try and mill out this the circle here. Alright, so I finished drilling out the center hole here with a hand drill. And I've got this clamped in to start milling it. Now I'm going to use these clamps here not quite correctly, turn sideways, because I just don't have enough room. This is really pushing the limits for this tiny little machine, but it's all I have. Normally these would go oriented the other way on there, and then these screws here at the back, you would screw that down until it hits the bed to keep your clamps nice and level. But yeah, I'm just going to take the screws out, and I've got them wedged there sideways. That seems to be in there somewhat secure. I mean, that is all play in the bed. Alright, so I got this one plate here finished. I gave up on trying to mill that out, and I wound up just taking the hole saw. And because I had already drilled out the center, I took a piece of wood and ran the hole saw through that, and then clamped it down and used that hole as a guide to drill this one out. And there was enough wobble and play with the hole saw as it was going through. It wobbled a bit and made the hole just slightly oversized, which was perfect. That's why I thought about it and then decided not to use the hole saw, because it was actually 10 thou under from being a tight fit. So but yeah, there was enough wiggle around. I've tried it out, it works fine, the motor fits in there perfectly. I've got these 4 holes here on the outside, and those are going to be for bolts to run through to another plate. This here is for that center shaft. I've got bearings somewhere, but I don't know where they are, so I'm not going to drill that out any larger until I find them. But for now, I think I'll fit it together without the bearings just to see. So while I'd clamped these plates together here, and I copied out these 4 outer bolt holes and this one for the shaft, so they all line up perfectly. So I got these spacers. So I've got these little spacers here that I cut out. It's just some square aluminum tubing, and I gotta clean them up still. And the idea is that they will fit like so, where these holes are. Alright. And then that plate will fit on there like that. The motor will stick through from this side like so. So I'll have an assembly that looks something like that, with the gear sticking out there. And of course this guy here will be fed into that assembly through this hole here, that shaft. And yeah, so I'm just going to go clean up some of these parts. I'm going to go outside, take the sander out, and because it's aluminum, and I'm just going to run them on my belt and this sander, and then I'm going to slap this whole thing together. And just a quick tip here, I was cutting up this piece of ready rod, and it's always nice when you're cutting stuff with a hacksaw to be able to throw it in the vise, but of course you don't want to mess up the rods. And some people put little blocks of, wood or nylon or something, over the jaws of the vise to try and protect it. But if you just thread it through a couple nuts, I find that works. It's a little bit wobbly in that because you can still turn it if that's really a concern. You can use, some lock nuts, but then that's a long way to thread it on too. That you're going to have to drive it with a wrench. But yeah, with these, I just spin them on by hand. It's a couple of regular nuts. Like I said, there's a little bit of play in that because they're not super tight, but it works, and it, now I know that the threads are fine. Alright. So my initial seal failed, so I went out and I got this silicone, what is it, a silicone baking mat, and I'm just going to trace out roughly the size here, and then I'm going to cut out 4 of these, and I'll cut out the inside as well, and make 4 silicone seals out of it, and hopefully that'll work better. Alright, well, I'm not going for beauty here, so I'm just going to try and at least separate these just with my utility knife here, and see how that works out. Well, I was going to get some scissors to finish that up, but, well, yeah, I think I will anyways. And then I'll cut the center out of one. And if it doesn't leak, then I'm going to put my camera in and submerge. Alright, so I cut out just the one. And I started tightening this down, and you can see it's still wiggling around in there. And the problem is I can't tighten these up. As I tighten them up, the acrylic is just bowing sort of arced up this way. So I'm going to make you have to make some sort of a plate to go over this to press down on it. Alright, so I put these washers on and I crank down a bit on the middle one, but I seem to be doing a lot better now. I can't really move that in and out, but just try and get a shot here from the side, and you can see how there's a bit of curvature to that, so I was a little leery of using this thinner material to begin with, so I'm not going to fabricate a metal bracket quite yet. I'm going to see, I might go see if I can get my hands on some thicker material first, and with big washers, and we'll see.